Well, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're talking about songs of philologists with now a sort of very well-known Tolkien dealer, Tom Ayling, who's recently acquired a copy and has it for sale. We actually have a link in the description for anyone who's interested in looking a bit more about the item. But I think start off a bit with Tom just giving a quick chat about the book.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you very much, guys, for having me. I think it was exactly 2 years ago, pretty much, that you kindly had me on to talk about my business selling rare books, and particularly Tolkien books. And I had very few interesting books to talk about back then in the early days, but I've been lucky enough to have some rather interesting books in the meantime, in no small part thanks to all of you. So yes, I mean, Songs for the Philologist is one of those books that a book dealer like me has on his, all-time lists of books you just want to get your hands on at some point one day. And you know deep down that you might only get the chance to handle it once. I was very close to being able to buy a copy a little under sort of somewhere between 18 months and 2 years ago, but wasn't able to. That was the last time that a copy came on the market. And so when I had the opportunity, a matter of weeks ago, to acquire one for stock, I jumped at it.
Yeah, I think you've said that it's the rarest Tolkien publication, and I think I'd say it's not quite the rarest. It's the rarest one that you can get a copy of. The rarest one's Sir Orfeo, but they're all owned by the Bodleian or Oxford University, so it's pretty impossible to buy all of those. So that's why I think this really is in your collection. This is probably the hardest one to get a copy of if you actually, and if to be a completist and have everything, most people this is going to be one that they would never have. So the fact there is actually one up for sale, it's quite rare. I think you said there was one a couple of years ago, and then they're sort of every 5 years sort of ish normally one might turn up, but they're only really 14 or 15, possibly 16 copies known, of which at least half are in institutions. So there aren't many private copies that could actually come up for sale.
No, and I mean, the private copies are becoming ever fewer. I mean, I know the fate of several of the copies that have, sold in the last 20 years, and slowly those in private hands will make their way into institutional hands. And going forward, it's going to double from every 5 years to every 10 years, then 20, and then who knows where you might next have the opportunity to acquire one, because it's a very finite small number that were printed in the first place. And maybe we can talk about this now. That it is a book that was published essentially. Tolkien knew nothing about it until a few years afterwards. It was published as a sort of printing exercise by students at University College London. And a small number of copies were printed. It's not recorded exactly how many. But then during the Second World War, UCL was bombed in the 1940s. And there was a fire in the printing room where the excess copies, i.e. those that weren't just taken away by the students that printed it, were held, and they were destroyed. We know this from a letter that Tolkien received in the 1940s about it. In that letter, it was suggested that perhaps, I think, 12 or 13 copies were known to have made it out. We now know that it's more than that. There are 12 copies currently in American and British institutions, and a very small handful, therefore, outside of that in private hands.
Yeah, I think as a guess, I don't think any more than 20 to 25 are ever going to turn, because they would have turned up by now. To be honest, if there were lots of them around, they would have appeared. So it's really is the odd couple may still turn up. Serapio, by the way, is 3 copies, so that's why it's the rarest. However, Serapio, the reason why
one additional copy to that, incidentally.
Yeah, the reason that none of those exist is because Tolkien's name's not on it. So anyone who did have one of those would never have known it was Tolkien in the first place, so they'd have thrown it away.
I do agree. I do agree with what Andrew's saying about how if the way the market is for Tolkien now, I mean,
they'd have turned up.
They would have turned up by now. I mean, there's so much interest out there in Tolkien. If it hasn't turned up by now, I think it's increasingly unlikely. As you say, Tom, it's increasingly unlikely.
So
I would especially think just with how many people have now heard of this title now, and I'm sure it's it's not everyone, but there's a lot of people out there that know about this title now because of videos like this one and information that's out there. So yeah, it seems logical that others would have turned up by now.
Tom, the copy you have, I think, was it has excellent provenance. It's basically been in the hands of a professor who knew Tolkien back in the day, and it was in his private collection, got handed down, and then hit the market. So this is the first time, I believe, that the copy you have has been and not just handed down from original sources.
Yes, it's got a really brilliant story to it, and that kind of continuous chain. So we can date it right back to UCL in the 1930s. So its original owner was H. Winifred Husbands, who was at UCL at the time of the printing and is the author of that letter to Tolkien that I mentioned in the 1940s, where it's speculated that perhaps 12 or 13 copies survive. Husbands gave a professor at UCL called Professor Arthur Brown 2 gifts that were Tolkien related. One of them was this copy of Songs for the Philologists, and the other one was Tolkien's original illustrated manuscript for Visio de Worst, which is now lost. It was last recorded, as far as I'm aware, in Arthur Brown's obituary, where it's noted that he often used to brandish his illustrated Tolkien manuscript to the delight of undergraduates at Monash University in Australia, which is where he ended up teaching after UCL. It's said that Brown stepped off the plane in Sydney and decided he never wanted to go back to the UK, which during the long British winter is something I can certainly relate to. And it's been essentially in Brown's ownership or custody since then, and after Brown's, or around the time of Brown's death, was gifted to a friend, and that's how it's come to market. That friend, who unfortunately can't help us with locating the illustrated Tolkien manuscript.
That's a shame, isn't it? That would be great if you could find
that
something like that.
Is a big
That'd
shame.
be brilliant.
That would be brilliant.
Yes.
It would. That would be fantastic.
Somewhere in Australia is my guess. There is a very attractively decorated.
Okay, we're all booking.
Page.
We're all booking
Road
plane
trip
tickets to Australia. Yeah, road trip Australia.
Well,
Yeah.
Tom, can we have you talk a little bit, maybe for folks who don't know what's in this book? Can you talk to us a little bit about what's inside?
Yeah, why don't I? Shall I take it out and I can show
Yes.
you? So this
Yes,
is
please. Yes, please.
This is a box that was made for it, and then I'll take the lid off so I can show you. Whoever made the box quite handily had a ribbon in a sort of little recess, so I can just pull that up to lift it out of the case without risk of damaging it, because this is it's a pamphlet and it's quite a fragile thing. I've got archival plastic on it, but I'll just take that off so that it doesn't glare for the camera. But
How's the binding still, Tom? The binding looks really sound, so it looks virtually unread. I mean, it looks like it's been kept in really, really good condition.
Yeah, I mean, without wanting to talk down my own stock, it's actually a little worse than that, Chair. That's what you find with this was originally stapled when it was bound in the 1930s, and what you find in a significant number of surviving copies is that those staples rust. And what's happened here is that where the staples have rusted, can you see there? It's been resewn with thread. So through the original staple holes, it's been resewn just to hold it together.
Yeah, that's a common problem. That's a common problem with older pamphlets that have been stapled, not just this one.
The one at the bottom that I've seen has very rusty staples in it. So, but they removed them eventually. But you can still see the marks. Well, they just go rusty. There's nothing you can do about it, really. That just happens.
I have 1,000 fanzines from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and rusting staples is a very common issue. And I love the thread idea to preserve holding it together, but be archival and not have the metal back in there.
If I open it up to the central gathering, you can maybe see that a bit more clearly. You can see the thread in the middle, but you can also see just where those staple holes are. There are, slight rust marks where those staples had become rusty and then were removed, but removed very carefully. So the actual external condition of the book is still really quite good, and they've got their printer's mark of the printing workshop at UCL on the back there. Inside, we have poems that were composed by Tolkien and E.V. Gordon in the 1920s at Leeds University, basically as a bit of a lark. So there's the contents list here. You don't get the division between the two as to whose is whose, but 13 of the poems Tolkien's, a large number are E.V. Gordon's, and some actually are just older, Norse songs and that sort of thing.
Traditional things, maybe some that they've translated or not translated in some cases.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
So some aren't of their own, authorship, but they've kind of presented them.
I think Tolkien, in his own version as well, he wrote the tunes as well that they're meant to be sung to as well. So, which is quite nice. So you can actually work out what they were intending the music to be with them when you sang, because obviously they are poem, they're for singing, really, as opposed to reading.
And you can see that. So for example, here you've got the title, and then under it you've got the tune that you should match it to. So yes, I mean essentially it's a collection of poems over.
Is the cover a different kind of paper than the internal pages? Is it more like a cardstock, or is it the same sort of paper as the internal pages?
It's all printed on reasonably heavy paper stock. The cover is slightly heavier. You can see here than the paper inside. Although for a sort of 1930s production, it's reasonably good quality. So we can see it's the same setting of type for the cover as for the title page, which just says at the bottom here, privately printed in the Department of English at University College London, and then 1936 in Roman numerals. This copy is unique among all known surviving copies of songs for the Philologists, in that there's an error in the imposition. So as you go through the book, you've got the title page that I showed you here, and then the contents page, and then printed on the back of the contents page is page 28. Opposite that is page 29, and then on the verso of page 29 is printed page 2, and then 3, and it goes on. And then you have sort of the opposite errors at the back of the book in imposition. So you've got page 26, 27 opposite it, and then you have page 4, which is the end of the contents, and then page 1.
Was this correct me if I'm wrong, the
Page 30.
book itself was a student project, a printing project, I
Yes.
believe. And so laying out which pages go on the sheet before it gets folded and cut, because they're printed on much larger sheets, the pages, and then they're folded and cut. So I would not be surprised if a student made an error and then they fixed it.
Well,
Yeah,
the picture that Tom showed earlier, which is this one, that is they use machines like that to actually print it. So
it was printed on an Elizabethan press.
Yeah, it's very clever. They actually did that. That's why that picture's in the back, because that's the sort of machine that they use. And it must have been so complicated having to do that.
Because what you're doing is you're printing, you've got to, what we call imposition, which is basically the arrangement of the type for each page, right, in the forms. And then you've got to do the same on the back and make sure that they match up. And essentially in the arrangement, in the imposition of the backside of the first sheet that was printed, they got it wrong. So that you have a situation where, page 28 is printed on the back of page 3 and so on.
That's interesting.
Well, that is
We-
unique because the Bodleian one that I've seen is correct. That mistake's not in the Bodleian.
So we were talking before we started that some of us have facsimiles of. I'll have to check mine and see. I haven't looked at it that close. Actually, I'll have to check it and see. But I doubt it's. I don't recall seeing that in my facsimile.
No, the facsimile is correct as well. The facsimile is based in the right order. But
So
that's fascinating. I'm not surprised they got it wrong. No, it's so complicated thing to do.
Well, and especially
again,
with students doing it, right? So
and again, in bibliography, we don't want to jump to conclusions, and I haven't jumped to conclusions in my description of the book, but I think that the likelihood is that it is an error that was made first and then corrected, which means that this could be the first copy off the press.
I think that's a reasonable assumption, Tom.
It's not an error that's duplicated in any of the 12 institutional copies, nor in 2 copies I've compared it to that are in private hands.
So basically, as Tom said, the only a small number were published. Were printed before it was realised that the copyright was an issue. Now, I suspect that originally, when these were done, the person who actually did them at UCL thought these are thousands of years old poems and things, so there's no copyright on them, so we can just print them. And then they realised probably that they were only about 10 years old in some cases, or 15 years old when some of the poems were written. But the front page, though, actually's got Tolkien's name on, so that doesn't. So they must have known, I suppose, it really was written by, or they could just, or they may have thought that they were just translations done by Tolkien, and they weren't the original poems. In which case, you could probably get away with publishing it, but. It's nice that some of them were taken away by the students because, as Tom said, there was this fire that destroyed all the remaining copies, and if they just left them all there, none of them are taken away. There won't be any left at all. So we're in a great position with people taking them when they probably weren't meant to. They were probably meant to leave.
No, they weren't probably supposed to leave with those.
Well, that's great,
right?
But
Yeah,
they still got it. It's because people took them away, and it's things like that are great. If you actually want to read these poems, they are all now in the Hammond and Skulls poems. They've all been put in there, so you can all Tolkien's ones. So that's not true. Actually, you can read Tolkien's ones. The other ones, though, aren't all in there, and some of them are. I actually think they're quite interesting. I like I think the poems in there are pretty good. They're in English, Old Norse, and Old English. I think. I don't think there's any Middle English ones in there. So
I don't think so.
But there are some.
I can't
Old
remember.
Norse.
I know there's some I know there's at least one Gothic one in there that
There's
I
Tolkien.
like
has.
the Gothic as
there is
well.
a Gothic one in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
Tolkien has a
So-
Gothic one. There's some not by Tolkien in Icelandic
Okay.
and Latin. Most of his are Old English.
So, Tom, if viewers out there are interested in it, interested in purchasing, they can pop in the shop, or you're taking it to some book fairs. What's going where it's making a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's currently available for sale on my website and in my bookshop here in South Oxfordshire. But also we're exhibiting at a number of book fairs over the coming weeks and months. So this weekend, it's at the Oxford Book Fair, which is at Oxford Brookes University's Headington campus on Saturday and Sunday.
That's in
And
the
then-
events calendar, by the way, on the Talking Guide. If anyone wants to see where that is, there's the address and everything's in there for you to attend. You want to go?
Yes, and then next month, again, all of this is subject to prior sale. Next month it'll be at First London, which is the UK's landmark book fair, held at the Saatchi Gallery. So yes, it'll be at sort of both those events, and also a number of people have written to me already to say can they come and have a look at it in person, either out of general interest or with some level of acquisitive intent. So people are very welcome to do that too.
And as I said, we have a link on the description to Tom's website to the item itself. So if you are interested in finding out more about it, then go and have a look. And there's lots of pictures and things on there. It's very well done and described.
Tom, how does it feel having it in hand? Is it kind of surreal having it in the shop there, knowing that it's so rare and so valuable?
It is. It's sort of one of those books where, having had
I know you handle a
wanted-
lot of rare and valuable books, but
yeah, this one's slightly different because Tolkien has a special, is special to me. So it sort of feels nicer than an equally rare and valuable, Jane Austen or Shakespeare or whomsoever. But there's also the sense that I sort of got so close to getting one previously and missed the opportunity. And then, in terms of its journey here, I obviously had to get it from Australia to the UK. And I was checking the FedEx tracking several times a day.
Yeah.
And I think this is due to the war and the situation in the Middle East. It took a very circuitous route to get to me. So normally with international shipping, it's actually really, really quick and direct, and it's sort of a very safe way to transport stuff. So it will leave, London, one night and be in New York or California the next morning. I saw that it was leaving Australia and then checked the tracking and saw that it was in Guangzhou, China, and thought, okay. And then checked in about 12 hours later and it was in New Delhi, India.
Wow.
And it then went from New Delhi to Paris. And I thought, okay, well, we're getting warmer.
Yes.
And finally it made that final flight from Charles de Gaulle to I think London Stansted.
And those of us that collect books know your pain, Tom. We feel your pain.
Yeah. it was as worrying at times, but then when it finally was here, I ran down to our post room and picked up the padded envelope that it had been sent in, which slightly concerned me. But but it's in a box that's custom made.
It's in a box, yeah.
And that's a really high level of protection. The box itself was really adequately and substantially bubble wrapped on top of that. So there was nothing untoward had happened to it in its journey here. So yes, when I finally got it in my hands, it was a very very, very special feeling.
Well, thank you for talking to us about it. I just find it fascinating to a few years ago, people had no real idea that Tolkien had even written books like this, and it's really nice to, or been published in something like this. It's really nice to be able to talk about some of the more obscure items, and you can't really get that much more obscure than Songs of the Philologists. Well, good luck with selling it, and whoever gets it, I think they're going to get a really good addition to the Tolkien collection that hardly anybody else has got. So
it's going to be a cornerstone of an excellent collection.
It would be, yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Tom. Good luck tomorrow in Oxford and firsts, and hopefully you stop showing this because it finds a happy home.
Yeah.
Yes, and I should just say before I go off, in addition to firsts, one more event at the end of May, the Tolkien Society's new Middle-earth Festival at Sarehall Mill.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving a talk at, and assuming it's still available, I'll bring songs along with me so that anyone who wants to see it can.
Great.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Tom, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.